Welcome. This is a saw look at photocomics, and because it's a saw look, it's bound to be full of a little bit of misinformation, maybe some contradictions and stuff like that, but hopefully we'll look at what's inspiring and fun about this weird and cool medium. I want to start off by taking a look at some random opinions on the internet. This blogger here says, I'm very sad about them here. The problems with photonovellas are one might as well watch the movie or episode. I suppose if someone was stuck on the edge of a civilization where one couldn't even get movies on one's phone, the photonovel might serve a purpose. Otherwise, why bother? Why not engage with the real thing? And this person, a scholar of the forum, says, it is said that a photonovel is so stupid, so poor, and so repetitive that there can be only one possible reaction: ignore it. And it's true, at its worst, we see that photonovels and photo images, sticking balloons on photographs and things, serves a novelty purpose, or maybe is a crude instructional form, as we're seeing here. So it gets a lot of ire, but it can be fun, and it's got a weird, rich history. And let's take a look. Some claim that it first started in Italy. Some claim that it first came in Mexico. Some claim that when it started in Mexico, it was 1943 by Jose Guadalupe Cruz, who is the creator of El Santo, and didn't originally create it in 43. I think El Santo came around 50 or something like that. And no idea what year this particular image is from. But Cruz was pretty interesting because he would involve photographs and drawings, and was pretty innovative in that way. And this is a really fantastic interaction, El Santo and a panther, that is half photograph, half drawing, painting, not really sure what. And it's notable here, it's all captions, and it's really dense text too. Later in the presentation, not later in time, but we'll see some word balloons, and here are some. And I'm pretty sure these axes being thrown at this man's head are painted on. I think also these are snipped together, these actors, and they're not all staged in one image. I'm not really sure, or one photograph. But anyway, yeah, the blood is drawn on. I'm pretty sure the axes are drawn on. So they're really having fun with visceral qualities of and the sort of sensory input of what a photograph is and what a drawing is. And there's a little bit here. So lots and lots of El Santo. There's decades and decades of El Santo. Of course, love interests, witchcraft and magic, surgery, all sorts of things. And this intense sequence here. Backtracking a little, I've read that as early as 1939, you were seeing this kind of thing in Mexican magazines, which might be some of the origins which Cruz might have been picking up on. I'm really not sure. This is from 1936, apparently. So that definitely predates what we've seen. So fast forward to the 70s and 80s, it's sort of a heyday for photonovellas. Lots of domestic stories, all sorts of genres. There's some El Santos, he's about to be unmasked. A search for Mexican photonovela will just give you image after image after image of that kind of thing. And again, it's gone. There's a lot of soap opera and domestic storytelling. So in Italy, somewhere around the end of World War II, it seems like some of that stuff first started. So here we're seeing early, probably late 40s. We're not seeing balloons, but we're seeing text, typeset, magazines like this one. We're seeing early, very, very, very text heavy, kind of like we saw with some of the Mexican ones. And then more traditional comics as we're used to. Bolero film was a very popular one. I think Bolero film still runs. I don't know if they still run photonovelas. But here's some examples. And you can see, like, you know, they even like set out the credits in this really cinematic way. And this is also, it's very cinematic. These photographs are probably using really good technology. I don't know much about the production of this kind of stuff and how much was invested in it, but the sheer different number of kinds of shots and stagings and lighting and things tells me that this was probably a little more high cost than some of the others. There's a look at some of the boleros and other things. Now, around the same time, I haven't been able to find any American versions of the same thing, but around the same time, this is 1948, Life magazine, they ran one of the most famous photo essays in American history called Country Doctor. And this follows a doctor, I think in northern Colorado, who was a doctor in the war, and shows him making the rounds of this incredibly rural area. And it's a really beautiful photo essay, and it's laid out a little bit like a comic, to my mind. There is definitely use of some graphic design and storytelling skills in sort of laying some of this out. The symmetry here, the sort of sequence of three here, the sequence of three here, the larger imagery sometimes buttressing the smaller imagery. Here is another small sequence which becomes very grand and intense in this big full-size picture. Again, symmetry, sequence, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Again, not a comic, but using storytelling, using design and sort of narrative techniques that we're used to. So by the 1960s, it was a pretty acceptable common medium. In Italy, it was certainly flourishing. Even Sophia Loren and other actors and actresses were starring in them. The author, the screenwriter of Bicycle Thieves, even wrote one, maybe wrote many, I'm not sure. Georges Wolinski and other kind of cheeky French cartoonists are getting in the act here, in their sort of avant-garde, fun-loving way. It spread to Argentina and a lot of Central and South American countries by this point, Brazil also. And in America, Harvey Kurtzman, the creator of Mad Magazine, was doing them almost monthly, certainly on a regular basis. I'm not sure how frequently, but every issue of Help had one. This is a real famous one. It's features John Cleese from Monty Python, and I'm pretty sure it predates Monty Python by a few months. And I'm also pretty sure it was directed by Monty Python cartoonist Terry Gilliam. In this one, John Cleese is more in love with his Barbie dolls than anybody else. Can't stop thinking about him. and this one also staged by Harvey Kurtzman. That's Henny Youngman, and he is more interested in pinball than in his date. That seems to be a common theme in some of these. Harvey Kurtzman, of course, huge influence on American humor, and found this medium really wonderful and expressive. And rumor has it that in his comics class, he would give an instant A to anyone who attempted a fumetti. I'm pretty sure this is Argentinian, but this is the French version of something called Killing, which was pretty popular for a while, I think. Now we're looking at the 70s and maybe 80s. It's pretty gruesome, but it went to multiple countries. You can find it in French, Italy, South America. This is a French version, I think. Oops, we've lost our 1980s header, but that's okay. So in the 80s, you see, in America especially, a boom in movie adaptations. Even really like sometimes it's sci-fi, but other times it can be really simple ones. Like I think this is from Can't Stop the Music with the Village People, that one there. And around that time, I think this is 77, 78, Star Trek became a big, actually it might be a couple of years later, they started introducing old episodes of Star Trek as photonovels. Looks like that. This is before, there's our header. This is before VCRs, and in fact, VCRs sort of put these books out of business. The main reason at this time, much like the blogger's issue that she had with Howl's Moving Castle, is that if you've got access to the movie, you don't need the book. And a lot of the sales of these kinds of books were because people wanted to revisit the movie. They wouldn't have a second chance to see it. Close Encounters or Alien or Rocky or whatever. They even went back into Hollywood's archives. This is an adaptation of Frankenstein, which is a little stiff in places to most readers. Around the 80s, I forget exactly what year this is, but this is the Ramones and Debbie Harry from Blondie, and Andy Warhol, even Peter Wolf from Jay Giles Band. A lot of New York punks put out this famous fumetti, which is a word we haven't used yet, photocomic. Mutant Monster Beach Party has Debbie Harry cruising down the street, parking. Joey Ramone's got his surfboard. There's like, little love interest. Debbie's going home. I can't remember what's going on in this crazy comic, but there is a sequence at a bar. Andy Warhol comes in, starts running around and ordering things around, blows something or else up. He's testing some sort of I forget, monster creation, destroying something or other. Anyway, this monster comes and eats Andy, Crush, and the monster is on its way to the beach, where there's a beach party. And if you remember all these punks in the 80s, they grew up with Annette Funicello and beach party movies and things, and so that they wanted to sort of pay homage to that, riff on that. And so Joey's hitting the waves, there's the monster, big fight at the end, the pool hall gang come. It's just a rockin' good time for all. There's Debbie Harry thinking about Joey. So even Marvel got in on it. Again, I'm guessing this is early 80s, 81, something like that. This is called the Fumetti book. And they went around and, these are really terrible photographs you're going to see. And went around the offices and took photographs and wrote out, scripted out some ideas and took the photographs. And it's worth mentioning, if it's not obvious, taking photographs and planning for something like this back then took a lot of work. You had to get the right shots. You had to develop the film. You had to have a way to lay out text on top of it. on top of printed photographs. There was probably virtually no digital component at that era. So fast forward to 2000s, you see it pop up now and then. Around the early internet days, there were poetry comics that were largely photo-based, like this one was pretty popular, A Softer World. And you would see photographs and text put on top. Has a sort of zine aesthetic. The filmmaker Melvin Van Peeples, who's incredibly revolutionary, interesting filmmaker, I haven't even seen this book, but put out this photo novella of his own movie with drawings on top sometimes. And rumor has it, or as I understand it, the book came out before the film, but even on this image, it says it came out after. So there's a lot of misinformation, but I think Van Peeples would want it that way. He's sort of defied certain kinds of rigid ideas sometimes, made things complicated on purpose. Julie Giusette, who was a cartoonist, of course, for a long time, she's gotten really, for a while, into photocomics. Hers are a little bit more, there's a sort of bit of a Dada influence to it. They're full of collage, even the text is collaged in. She is riffing a lot on, well, male-female dynamics, Catholic dynamics, soap operas, also sales pitches and that kind of thing. One of the high points to me is the merging that happened between drawings and photographs in a book called The Photographer, originally out in French, Guy Lefebvre and Emmanuel Guibert. If I'm remembering that, it's Guy Lefebvre. He was a photographer with Doctors Without Borders, and went to Afghanistan. This is the late 80s, I think, and documented the trip there. And the experience is so intense. He took very, very a lot of diaries and tons of photographs. And when he met Emmanuel Guibert decided to help him turn it into a visual story in which the photographs are very, very much intertwined with the drawings. So the drawings sort of move us through the story, but the photographs let us stay in the scenes longer when we need to. And there's a lot of harrowing, intense imagery that comes out in the photographs. Oh, another Julie Doucette one. A little out of order, but it gives you a sense of the way she plays with language in general. Another French comic that utilized both pictures, both drawings and photographs is The End of Why I Killed Peter. This is a great book about trauma, and at the end there's this dropping away of the art that previously told the story here, literally like artfulness, and then it goes into a crude photograph sort of way of depicting the events. Nowadays, Mira Jacob is pretty popular and utilizes photographs in her work a lot, and drawn photographs, or rather traced or drawn from photographs, as well as backgrounds that are photographs, and kind of using them almost like little color forms. And of course her work is very dialogue heavy and dialogue based, so it can allow for a certain lack of movement in the visuals. Sort of highlights the dialogue. Oops. artist Luke Howard at the end of his book, which I think is called Our Mother, which investigates the kind of frustrating and harrowing relationship he had with his mother, who clearly suffered from some mental illness. And in the book, which is I think about 20 or 30 pages, he uses a variety of genres to explore that story, to explore their relationship. But ultimately, at the end, reverts just to photographs and has dialogue between child him and his mother, and in this really playful way that adds a directness and just like being direct inside of the story, in the same way that the Why I Killed Peter does as well. It sort of drops the artifice and forces you to sort of confront the world a little bit more realistically. That story works really well. It's really nice. And then even Star Trek has sort of come back. This is Marvel and DC Comics superstar John Byrne decided that he wanted to revisit Star Trek and is using, this is kind of really interesting collage, he is using tons of screen grabs from Star Trek, but inventing his own stories. So he's grabbing screen grabs from everywhere and inventing stories, only utilizing the material that he has. Actually, that might not be true, because I think he's also sometimes designing new backgrounds and things like that. But in general, the actors are all from screenshots he's already got access to. But even this alone is a scene you've never seen. I mean, you've never seen that many people at sickbay in Star Trek. The actual set probably wasn't even big enough to fit it. But so he's having fun with trying to imagine new stories from old materials. And some fine artists get in on the act. This is an artist out of Chicago who calls this photonovela, and it's a limited series book. It deals with stories and material, political experiences in Latin America, but it's designed for a fine arts world. And I forget, to be honest, where I got this, but this is also a fine art artist who uses photonovellas. I forget her name in her work. And nowadays there are a few here and there very, very ambitious photonovella projects, because now with the digital tools it's so much easier to stage, to color, to color in post-production, to crop, to get the right shots, to use high-resolution images, to zoom in, zoom out, all that stuff. So some people are certainly using that to explore the medium some more. This is a post-apocalyptic sort of zombie thing. We did it here at SAW. We did a photonovela in, I think, around 2010 called All Tomorrow's Nightmares, and from a personal standpoint, it was one of the most fun things I ever did in comics. It was a blast. I co-wrote this with Stephanie Manaheim, who is sitting there. She drew all the Nancy hats on top of everybody. This was something we've been planning for a very long time, but it was really impossible to get everybody in the same place at the same time, and it wound up being the last 2 hours of one of the hottest days in August in New York City, and it was so hot we had to wait until nearly sundown. So a lot of these pictures, we couldn't get all the photos we wanted. We had to sort of after the fact write around some of the things we missed because we couldn't get all these shots that we wanted. So it was an extremely fun experiment in planning, in getting what you get, in rewriting after the plans go a little bit awry, but it was also a real blast to play with the stiffness that is inherent, I think. Look at this and this, the stiffness that's inherent in seeing a photograph of somebody in motion, or even a photograph of someone who's pretending to be in motion. We had a really great time, and if you want to search for that, you can tell us if we did a good job or not. Sorry. So back to Kate and some of the ideas about comics, or about photonovellas and their problems. She says, "Why bother? I have Howl's Moving Castle. It makes me very sad. Why not engage with the real thing?" Well, I don't have Howl's Moving Castle, but I do have Spirited Away, the photonovella, and she's right. Like in this sequence, and frankly any sequence in Spirited Away, or Howl's Moving Castle, or any movies by Miyazaki and Ghibli, is spectacular, right? And so what are we looking at here? We're looking at still images of something that's so graceful in motion. We're looking at an attempt in one medium, comics, to translate what was fluid in another medium, in the movie. And it's not the same at all. But maybe that's okay. Look at, if you remember this moment perhaps from the movie, it's so fluid and so weird and spooky. And this is strange in a different way. It's stiff, but this repeated pattern is really fascinating to me personally. This image here lasts for a fraction of a second on the screen, but you can really drink it in here in this version. So there's something to photocomics and these adaptations and stagings, and something about seeing this thing on the page that can really open our senses up and can really let us see the world anew, let us see our stories anew, let us see the stories that we're comfortable with anew, let us create new stories. Like, it's a fascinating medium, and it doesn't have to be, there we go. It doesn't have to be that photocomics are just weird, stiff and ugly. I say they are weird, stiff and ugly, and let's do more of them. For that reason, let's stand up for the underdog of the art form for photonovellas. So that's the Saw look at photocomics. Thanks a lot.